Hello and welcome to Spaceoneers Live. We present to you live here from YouTube, our very first panel looking at the commercial opportunities for human spaceflight in Europe. This is an interactive event on YouTube, so feel free to post your questions in the live chat or post to hashtag Spaceoneers Live and we'll endeavour to answer your questions. So Spaceoneers is a brand of design data. We're a multimedia company based in Cologne, and we specialize in communications for space and science. So we've developed Spaceoneers into one of the most important community portals here on the European new space sector. We host a new space calendar highlighting some of the top current European space and startup activities, most recently featuring webinars, of course, in light of the sort of COVID-19. Our portal features news and interviews with some of the founders of Space Scene and infographics on current space topics and markets. We also include a map of all startups and scale-ups in the industry in Europe. So to our panel, we are in an exciting era of space, and the year 2019 was a record-setting one for startup space, with more than $5.7 billion of investment reported in the likes of the Brightspace report. Several companies are planning important technical demonstrations for 2020, and others are promising an expansion of operations. Services and products that have long attracted investment are scheduled to deploy later this year. We are now seeing the pushing of the boundaries of commercial human spaceflight, most recently, of course, with SpaceX and Crew Dragon. But new commercial opportunities are enabling services to the space station and beyond. And here we explore some of Europe's developments. So first I introduce Hilde Stenuit, IceCube's business developer of Space Application Services. Hilde is currently using her expertise to guide users of and create opportunities for commercial access to LEO through the first European commercial ISS service called IceCubes. Secondly, we have Yannick Yego, who's leading the sales of the ISS external platform Bartolomeo, which is also enabling commercialization of the space station. He's a business and sales manager at Airbus Defence and Space. Lastly, we have Jürgen Schlutz. He's the German delegate to ESA's program board for human spaceflight, microgravity and exploration, the exploration coordinator at the German Aerospace Center, DLR. So first, a big thank you to our panelists for joining us. I ask each of them sort of to present for 5 minutes, and then we'll sort of end with a Q&A. So first to Hilde, if you want to sort of present your slides.
Okay, thank you, Ryan, for the introduction. Let me jump to my slides. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Hilde Stenuit and I am with Space Application Services, as you mentioned, which is an SME with headquarters in Belgium. And I'm pleased to shortly introduce our IceCube service. Our IceCube service can bring you to the International Space Station. And the International Space Station gives access to a unique environment that has assets that cannot be reproduced here on Earth. And with IceCubes, we provide a service to give any organization fast and direct access to this unique environment of microgravity and of radiation. IceCube stands for International Commercial Experiment Cube Service, and we own a facility inside of the International Space Station that can accommodate a wide range of different research, technology, and educational projects. Our service is operational since 2018, and we run it under a partnership with the European Space Agency. The IceCube service carries your content to space in customizable cubes or units. As you can see, some of them here accommodated in our facility on board of the International Space Station. Our scope with the service is to allow for anyone to make use of the ISS as a unique lab or a unique test bed, either in view of space or testing technologies for space exploration, but also surely to make space part of everyday value chains for Earth. So to use the assets of this space environment for the benefit of us Earthlings and for R&D or research and development activities here on Earth. And we do that in the context of what is referred to as the democratization of access to space. So to allow anybody to access space and to see actually the low Earth orbit as the area of space where the International Space Station is, as a kind of natural extension of the terrestrial labs, but also as a natural extension of our Earth economy. So what we do with the service is to give direct access for both space, but also for organizations that have never done anything in space. And what we did is we made this service simple in the sense that we take care of the space processes and supply an end-to-end service so that the users can actually concentrate on what they do best, which is their research activities, their technology activities, or their educational activities. The service is made fast and regular, so it fits into value chains here on Earth as well. And now it takes only a couple of months to launch new samples to space, and less than 12 months in case you want to launch actual new infrastructure to our facility. A user can interact real time with their cube or their unit in space to adapt their protocol or to change parameters or to see real-time data from space, from wherever they like, their lab, their university, their company. And the service is made as cost efficient as is possible right now. And the resulting IP is owned by the customers. So if we address and technology project and research projects and educational, if I look at the research projects and look at research and development or more applied research, I list here on this slide all non-space R&D sectors that can actually benefit from microgravity. So where microgravity offers real value. And you see that that is not just a tiny list of tiny sectors, but these are significant non-space sectors like pharma, like food, like novel materials, and so on, that can take value from accessing to microgravity and accessing to space. And so this democratization of access to space through services like ice cubes is really crucial in bringing space to these non-space R&D sectors. And I give you a couple of examples of research areas where we are active. So for example, you can go to microgravity to take advantage of the fact that you can create easily three-dimensional cell structures, which can serve well to, for example, test the effects of new drugs. And then you can imagine to put these cells, or in this case, you see a picture of organoids together with nutrients, together with a microscope, with thermal control, all in these little customizable cubes that can then be operated in our facility. Another example is a mission or a service that is already operational and had already a first mission in December last year that allows for protein crystallization under microgravity conditions. So when you crystallize proteins, you see that they are larger and of better quality under microgravity conditions than if you would do that on Earth. And this is very useful, again, in the context of drug development, for example. And together with a Japanese partner, we started a service called Kirara, and they developed this small incubator that allows to keep these proteins at the temperature that they like to crystallize, and that's operated again in our facility. So these are two examples where we are active, but there's a couple of other examples of cubes that we have flown in the past, and I showed three because they are very different. So the first one on the left is an artistic cube with a kaleidoscope that served to inspire people on the ground to allow them to interact with an artistic setup in space. The middle one is a research one that looks at plants' growth under space conditions. So they made a greenhouse in this cylinder that you see in the middle. And the one on the right is a technology cube where ESA used this cube to test aspects of cybersecurity. So very different range that can all be accommodated in these customizable cubes, and that can be accessed by anybody or any organization. So with this, that's my overview of our IceCube service, providing fast and direct access for any organization to do research and technology innovation. And so I look forward to talk a bit more in the questions. So back to you, Ryan.
Thank you so much, Hilde. So so next we have Yannick Jaeger from Airbus. Can I show you?
Yes, thank you, Ryan. So I will introduce myself. I'm Yannick Jaeger. I'm the sales manager for Airbus and in Bremen, and I will present you a product and a service we have finished to develop, and which is in place for a few months on the ISS. So let me open my file. So this product is a so-called Bartolomeo, which is an external platform which is placed outside the ISS. So here you have a picture about the platform itself directly on the module Columbus. It was launched in March and installed in the last months, and we will finish the commissioning during the summer to allow us to place our first commercial payload beginning of February 2022. Here we're speaking about a slot which could be relatively large, because we propose to host a large payload of over 1 cubic meter and over 400 kilograms. But as well, we have the possibility to host a small payload from a size of 3U. And so we are looking for, we are addressing this product, to different markets, or institutional, university, research institute, but as well to the fully industrial and commercial customer and SMEs and startups. So, the advantage of Bartolomeo compared to different platforms you can find on the ISS is the position of it, because it's in front of the ISS. To the flight direction, which allow it to have a very, very open view to the RAM, but as well to the nadir and to the zenith directions. So it makes it a big advantage. And we have, of course, these different slots, or 12 slots. And one of these slots will be mainly focusing on small payloads and what we call an ARGAS, ARG-US, which is in development by your colleagues from Houston, US, which will allow, as I said, to host in a ride-sharing mode up to 10 small payloads from 3U. Yes, so what we propose here, of course, the objective is to support so different entities to make happen the experiment and on the ISS. So we propose all-in-one commercial services where we take over when the developer, the payload developer is ready with payload. We take over his payload, we prepare it for the launch, we bring in on the ISS, we put it on the Bartolomeo, and then we get access to the customer to his payload to command some activities and to manage his mission and to get, of course, the data necessary. All that in an easy way, because the only interfaces for the customer is his laptop or his personal computer, and to an interface with a cloud, an Airbus cloud, which is allow to get all this data and commands in an easy way. So for information, if we these services propose some option like the return of the payload on Earth if you need to have it, or to make some check about that. So here we have an overview of the different slots, and here on the left side you have what we call the Argus. We will see it later a little bit. So the payloads, they arrive in the airlock, and from the airlock they have so the future airlock, the future Bishop airlock, and they will be moved with the robotic arm to the different slots. So location, I will say that, and so with specific interfaces, you have got here on the picture on the left side, which are the go-to interfaces, which allow easily to a robotic arm to place the payload to the Bartolo platform. So of course, it's a commercial service, so it has a price. And if you look in the middle, you will see is what we call the Argus. So we start with 126 kilograms from 3 to 8U. And if we got to standard slots, or a little bit less than 1 cubic meter, here we're speaking about 3.5 million euro, including the airlock cycles and the launch, of course. And we can grow up the size. We can couple two standard slots. We have what we call a double slot, and then we're speaking over one cubic meter volume and over and 450 kilograms. For less, we're speaking about a more larger amount of price, which is about over 5 million. Yes, here specifically, you can have a bleak about the Argus. The particularity of the Argus is a ride sharing solution. So you will fly with other payloads, and so we have some utilization to be respected because you are not alone. Not here, the only interface you have here is a plate, so mechanical interface to this space in gray here, and a connector, a specific connector to allow the power and transfer of data. So here is we're speaking for small payload, we can reach some equivalent of 140U per side, because you see it's a plate and you can place the payload on the two sides. So equivalent 140U, because such payload, I think they're difficult to find. So it's just to present you that what we're saying to you using the airlock, so the Japanese one or the future Bishop one. And see example of field of view. Here we have a slot 3, one of which is in front of the payload. So you see this kind of simulation you will have to get to better understand the kind of view you will get according where your payload is placed on the platform. Yes, so we'll not go back. So capabilities, yes, we are not limited in terms of mission you can do. IoT, IUV, of course, scientific experiment, exobiology. So we have no limitation. Of course, the only limitation we have are because we are using the ISS. So we have not able to choose the orbit, I would say. But is a really good product and services to access easily for you, payload provider, ISS and the LEO in an easy way. Yeah. Focus on your payload, and we will focus on bringing you to ISS and managing your mission. So that's why I will stop here.
Okay.
So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Yannick. And finally, we have Jürgen Slutz from DLR. Jürgen, over to you.
Thanks, Ryan. Hello, everyone. And apologize actually from my side for not preparing slides. I felt that I can also transmit enough of the ideas in this short time frame that we have through simply speaking to you. And I hope that is sufficient. So thanks for the invitation today, and thanks also for the presenters that we already had. I think when we talk about commercialization, we already see two perfect examples here that have been successful in bringing opportunities, services to the International Space Station. And I think that's the general starting point that I want to make, is that we really see a changing international landscape, a changing landscape of actors, participants, and also communication of space and the challenges, but also the opportunities that we have in space. And obviously institutional partners, institutional players, including DLR, including ESA, and many others, need to not only acknowledge that, but work with that, foster that, allow for opportunities where we can. And we're seeing that all over the place in the international domain. Most of the people obviously look to the US, where it's most prominent with the commercial services that we see to the ISS in terms of cargo that has been flown. Now, Ryan already mentioned it, the commercial crew launch by SpaceX. I think all of us really applaud and congratulate SpaceX for that success to get the spaceship up there and astronauts healthy to the International Space Station. Hopefully they will also return safely to the Earth. Actually not too soon, because we are all happy for having more astronauts on the space station to actually do more on the space station, including the utilization of ice cubes in Bartolomeo and many other opportunities. We see the same actually when it comes to exploration. In the Artemis program, it's building heavily on potential commercial support through the initial CLIPS program, so commercial lunar payload services, landers that will bring payloads to the surface, not only scientific payloads, but technology demonstration, technology maturation, ground truth data that is really necessary for the future human steps towards the moon, but also when it comes to developing transportation in more general terms, to the gateway, that is one of the first footholds towards the moon, but also to the lunar surface, where we've seen commercial proposals. Now, when we speak of commercial there, I think what we have to acknowledge is that it's not like we're working first time with industry or with commercial partners. I mean, all of us have been doing that for years and decades, including Hilde and Yannick and others that we see here. I mean, this is not that we start working with space, but it's really what we see is a redistribution of responsibilities, a redistribution of or a difference in risk sharing between institutional actors and commercial players. And what we essentially need to see is a diversification, not only in terms of services, but particularly also in terms of users. And we've been, from a space sector side, been focusing a lot in the past, and still somewhat today, I think, on the services aspect, on providing the service. But we really have to stress in much more, with much more effort, I think, the diversification of users. And that may mean further institutional users, including other research institutions than the typical space domains, which might include other international institutional actors than the ones already involved in space station or space station research. But that may also involve, obviously, commercial users or educational and inspirational projects. And that's really, I think, where we have to make an additional effort. And that's also the goal, I think, of all the space agencies when we speak about commercialization, using that term. So yeah, I think I'll stop here saying that, yes, internationally it has been widely recognized that the commercial sector has played a crucial role in the exploitation and the exploration of space, will play a crucial role, but that we have to understand better how to work together on different levels in the let's say classical in the classical procurement approach by the institutional agencies, but also in terms of really proactive proposals from the commercial sector and from potential users. So yeah, I'll stop here. Back to you, Ryan.
Thank you, Jürgen. And I think you highlight there how more inclusive the industry is becoming with different types of users. And I mean, one thing I wanted to sort of touch on was the sort of term Space 4.0, and maybe Jürgen, you can sort of elaborate on this, because I think this was only a few years ago in the 2016 ministerial. So what's really been the driving force behind this, would you say?
Yes, I mean, Space 4.0 has been a term coined or used much in the ESA context, particularly by the Director General in the ESA Ministerial 2016, and in the development of potential commercial partnerships in most general terms between agencies, not only ESA but also national agencies across Europe and the commercial sector. The idea is that we have really developed in the space domain from an original Space 1.0, where was the first steps into space, the late 50s, early 60s, where everyone was still testing the ground, to then Space 2.0, more or less the space race, where we really had competition driving space between the institutional actors, particularly the US and Russia, to Space 3.0, which was all about partnerships, which was all about collaboration and cooperation in space on the initial space stations that we had already, but particularly on the International Space Station that we have today. And what we see is that really today the landscape is developing beyond institutional actors only in terms of their proactive attitude to getting things done. And that's Space 4.0 that's really that really has commercial partners, industry also in a driving seat of space exploration much more than before.
Thank you, Jürgen. And I really love the examples that Hilde you gave there with different art collaborations and technologies and sciences. I mean, how do you enable this for those different users? I mean, how do you bring these people on board?
Well, I think Jürgen already highlighted a number of very important characteristics, and I think indeed the accessibility and making lines as short as possible, I think, is very important. So what we try to do is really make the processes streamlined and as direct as possible for people. So if people want to use our service, it's really as simple as they contact us and they tell us what they want to do. And that can be, I mean, it can be a company that has budget ready for R&D activities, but it can also be a company that has no budget ready. We can help them also in targeting or in seeing like, okay, this might be a source of budget that allows you to access. It can be universities, it can be research centers. Again, we can help them also in terms of, okay, where could they find grants, and we participate, for example, from our side also in writing some of these grants requests. And it can be, I mean, schools, it can be even citizens, as you said, that have direct access, which now becomes possible because indeed prices have been going down and we're breaking up. I mean, in our case, we're using these small cubes, which, because they're small, are already cost efficient, but we're also, for example, this protein crystallization service, it has almost 100 tubes in there. So everybody, even at the level of a single citizen, not a simple, a single one, they can basically, I mean, purchase their access, and it's really accessible because pricing, for example, starts at a couple of Ks to get your proteins flown to space. So it's really, yeah, it's really important that that is now happening, and that it has all these characteristics of making that line very short and making it reusable, making it repeatable. We're using miniaturized components or setups. We use commercial off-the-shelf components, which also people can find themselves. So it makes it all low cost and accessible. And we take care of these space processes so that people don't need to bother about that. And that makes it, yeah, accessible at the different levels of organizations or individuals.
I mean, maybe Yannick, you can comment on, how does the affordability, the accessibility sort of compare to, say, like 10 years ago? I mean, how are things shifting in this sort of new sort of paradigm?
Yes. So at first, two comments. When we're speaking a lot about commercial services, space services, I mean, these services, these commercial services are only possible because there's institutes or agencies behind that. And it's true for Bartholomew with ESA, but it's true as well for SpaceX with NASA. Without NASA, maybe SpaceX will not success to be what is SpaceX today. So I think it's going in the two directions. And thank you for ESA, for instance, for us for its continuous support. Yes. So in terms of access to space, I think today for us is the first step with the ISS and with Bartholomew. We know now that launcher providers are very, very, very in a competitive race to bring very, very cheap access to space, because even SpaceX now is going to this market of small payloads. So offering as well in a ride-sharing mode, of course, to address this small market of startups. So yes, there's a boom. There's a boom of private services for launch. There's a boom of private services for small satellite platform. So in Europe, there are a lot of companies proposing this kind of service and developing new small sat payloads. And of course, on the ISS, we've seen it with IceCube, but not only in pressurized inside the modules, and we outside the modules. So I think it's the first step. What we're doing. Tomorrow we speak a lot about the lunar gateway. So I think for the lunar gateway, it will be a second big step as well to access another space environment, to perform over experience, to perform over demonstrations, and to enable all these technology developer, I would say the technology developer, but it's not limited to technology development, to go quickly to demonstrate their capabilities and to fire and to be used quicker. And if I can give another example, we are working with, we have a lot of requests from startups, and really from people not coming from the space industry, the space environment, the space culture. And it's very, very interesting because they, of course, because they have this kind of company or startups, they're running to develop the TRL, they're running to develop the business case, the technology of the TRL, the technology, and of course, they're running after money, after funding. And so usually they came to us quite late. So they say, okay, next year I want to fly. So I expect to have the money in 6 months, and I want to fly in next year. So it's always very challenging. And what we propose and what we do with most of them is to accompany them quite early in their development of a business case. At first, not only to have the right cost to do the mission they want to do, but as well to support them to develop their project, to develop their payloads, and to be successful with their investor and capital venture. Yes, and there have, of course, you can imagine there's underestimation about the effort necessary to fly in space and LEO. But it's very interesting, and really enjoy it to work with this kind of companies, or research startups, or research companies, generally speaking. This can be as well SMEs when enter this new market.
Thank you, Yannick. So I'm just looking at a few questions sort of online here. So maybe I turn to those. So if, people on YouTube. So maybe back to you, Jürgen. How do you see the ISS or Gateway expanding in the future to support a wider breadth of commercial and scientific activities?
So, well, I think we are already seeing a lot of commercial activity towards the ISS and the utilization of low Earth orbit, and I think that's where it needs to start in the larger scope, because essentially the institutional actors, the agencies, are also somehow or somewhat the pathfinders for developing space in the first place, and we've done that now with the ISS. We have a really unique and capable laboratory that enables a lot of access for all kinds of different users, and that provides a lot of capabilities, including those provided by the commercial services. So I think the ISS, we will always see research and activity in low Earth orbit, be it on ISS or any platform that might come after it. But essentially, I think the ISS will be there for quite a number of years still, because it is still a very capable platform. We have just in the last ministerial of ESA in 2019 put in a year, somewhat tentative year of 2030 that we are aiming at operating the International Space Station, and that will provide a lot of opportunity also for the commercial service providers to actually get their business case closed and get additional users on the space station. When it comes to the Gateway, we really have to make sure that we don't that we do on the Gateway what's really necessary to be done on the Gateway, and what's useful to be done on the Gateway. I mean, the Gateway is an infrastructure that is close to the moon, that is quite far from Earth. It's much more difficult to get to, much more costly to get to in terms of payload, in terms of astronauts. So no one can and should expect the Gateway to replicate an ISS capability in terms of research and commercial opportunity. It's really the unique environment of the Gateway in the lunar vicinity, with the view to the moon, with the view to Earth and the deep space environment, that make it unique. And we'll really have to focus on how to best use that space environment for utilization of the Gateway. And that might, in the beginning at least, be really be still a much more institutional driven utilization scenario, I believe, but there are already plenty of opportunities for commercial partners to get involved, and there are continuous calls to understand what we can do best on the Gateway once it is ready in 4 to 5 years. Also for the Gateway, I'm expecting a lifetime well above 10 years, so there will be plenty of opportunities.
I actually have a specific question, Jürgen. So is DLR planning or considering commercial contract approaches by acting as an anchor customer, as done with NASA, SpaceX for COTS and commercial crew program? If yes, how could that possibly look?
Well, I guess that depends somewhat on the scope and the domain of activity that we're looking at. I mean, DLR is already trying to do that in many ways when it comes to application programs, to technology development, and the pushing for technology and systems made in Germany within the international space sector and beyond. When it comes to human spaceflight and exploration, what we're talking about at the moment, this is really something that we are doing and that we plan to do through the European Space Agency. So on a European level, this is these are space activities that are beyond the capability and the scope of the national German space program. So it's essentially not really DLR acting, but it's Germany as one of the members of the European Space Agency really enabling commercial opportunities in the domain of human spaceflight and exploration. And there we have a continuous open call for commercial opportunities, where also IceCubes and Airbus as Bartolomeo platform are stemming from, and have evolved and initially now laid the groundwork for the first services. And there ESA is already acting as an enabler to a certain extent, as an anchor customer, depending on the different proposals that we have. We have, for example, also one that is looking at providing lunar communication and navigation services through a satellite system, a satellite network. And there, ESA is much more an anchor customer. For Bartolomeo and IceCubes, I would say ESA was much more an enabler in terms of providing infrastructure access to the International Space Station, rather than the anchor customer in the first place.
So a final question here from YouTube. So possibly for Hilde, what are the lessons learned from the ISS commercialization, from the initial commercialization in 2002? But perhaps you could share some of your sort of experiences from being the first sort of service provider here.
Yes, and maybe I can link it back to what your question also on Deep Space Gateway and so on, because I think what we have learned over the couple of years with IceCubes now is that us from the space industry or space ecosystem, we have very nice pictures and very nice infrastructure, but in all honesty, these technical aspects of this infrastructure are not of immediate interest to the people. I think space is very inspirational to people, and space can bring value to Earth that is currently underutilized, and we need to talk about what it is that space brings in terms of value. And yeah, I think not to talk too much about these platforms, about the technicalities, about the infrastructure, but really about the inspirational value and the value that space can bring for people on Earth, even today, for those non-space sectors, but also for citizens and students. And for me, that's the main lesson learned for IceCubes, but in general for us that are all involved in this new ecosystem and new roles that we all see in the context of this commercialization and democratization that I think is very, very exciting for all of us to witness and see history happening.
Okay, thank you, Hilde. So I want to end it there and thank our panelists. So thank you for being part of a very first sort of Spaceoneers Live. So next time, in 2 weeks' time from now, on the 2nd of July, we will be speaking to a few different space clusters across Europe. So we'll be looking at how they're supporting to foster their business ideas and how they bring this to sort of fully commercial startup companies. So I want to thank everyone, and thank you everyone for your comments on YouTube and on Twitter, and hope to see you again next time. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, and bye to all.
Bye. Bye. Bye.